Montana Territory, winter of 1885. The pine forest whispered with the bitter breath of winter. Snow clung to the needles. Icicles hung like daggers from low branches, and a heavy silence pressed upon the valley. Eli Cartwright rode alone through the drifts, rifle slung across his back, eyes sharp beneath the brim of his hat. His face, weathered from wind and loss, bore the heavy shadows of a man who'd buried his heart along with his wife. The cattle tracks were long gone, swept clean by the snow. His lantern swung at his saddle, casting faint yellow glows across the frozen earth. Then he saw it. Bare feet, delicate prints, human, but wrong somehow. Too light, too nimble, leading into the deepest part of the pines. Eli dismounted, rifle ready, following the trail until the trees opened to a clearing and froze. A girl knelt by a snowdrift, tangled black hair falling to her waist, skin streaked with dirt. Her eyes gleamed storm gray beneath a wild brow. Around her, wolves, half a dozen, silent as smoke, their hackles raised, teeth bared, until she lifted a hand. One quiet gesture, the wolves retreated into the shadows. And for the first time in months, Eli felt something stir beneath his grief. Eli Cartwright had not believed in ghosts, not until Sarah died. Since her fever took her last spring, the old homestead had been a shell. Just him, the cattle, and silence. 40 acres of rocky pasture, an old barn, and a house that creaked when the wind howled through the cracks. The folks in town pitied him. A good man, they said. Solid, but no one blamed him for keeping to himself now. But they whispered, too, about the wolf girl. For years, travelers and hunters claimed to see her. Some said a spirit, others a feral child raised by beasts. Eli had dismissed it as whiskey talk. Until tonight. She wasn't a spirit. She wasn't a myth. She was real, and collapsed by his barn come morning. Eli had nearly ridden past, until his lantern caught the flash of movement. There she was, curled against the boards, thin as a rail, shivering beneath a tangle of furs and pelts. Blood stained her palms. A half-eaten rabbit clutched to her chest. She looked up, eyes wide, ready to bolt. But she couldn't. Her ankle was twisted, swollen. Eli approached slowly, rifle lowered, voice calm. Easy now. The girl bared her teeth, like a wolf, but her limbs trembled. She was no threat now, just starved, half-frozen, a ghost made flesh. And, beneath the grime, he saw it, beauty, fragile as winter frost. Getting her inside wasn't easy. She fought like a cornered animal, snarling, scratching. But exhaustion won out. Eli laid her by the hearth. She recoiled from the flames, hissing softly, retreating to the shadows like the wolves she'd mimicked. She refused water, spat out bread. Only raw meat quieted her, and even then, she tore at it like the starving beast she resembled. Days passed. Eli cleaned her wounds, noting old scars, bites, scratches, a jagged scar across her ribs. She flinched at every touch, but didn't flee. Around her neck hung a weathered leather cord. At the end, a small silver locket. Eli carefully opened it while she slept. Inside, a faded sketch, smudged but unmistakable. A man, a woman, and a child. A family. His gut twisted. She hadn't always been wild. Something terrible had happened. The townsfolk would want answers. Already, word spread. Eli Cartwright had the wolf girl. Men would come, curious, greedy, or worse. Some would see her as a sideshow prize, others as a dangerous animal to be put down. Eli bolted the doors, kept his rifle close. Why was he protecting her? He couldn't say. Maybe it was the loneliness. Maybe it was the ghost of Sarah in his ear. Or maybe it was those eyes. Fierce, sad, human beneath the wild. It was the small things that changed first. The way she watched him. Intense, curious, mimicking how he chopped wood, how he poured water. the way her head tilted when he spoke, as if the words stirred faded memories. And the music. One cold evening, as the snow fell soft against the window panes, Eli heard it, a faint hum from the shadows of the loft. Low, haunting, a lullaby, the same tune Sarah used to sing, rocking by the fire, weaving peace into the cabin walls. His breath caught, his grief prickled sharp beneath his ribs. The girl paused when she saw him listening, wary, ready to bolt. But Eli just nodded. "You remember more than you know," he whispered. From that night forward, she no longer cowered by the door. Eli gave her a name, Runa, the old word for secret, because that's what she was. A secret of the woods. A secret that would soon shake the quiet life Eli thought he'd buried himself in. And outside, beyond the frosted glass, the pines whispered of the storm to come. The storm rolled in like a living thing. By morning, the world beyond Eli's cabin was buried beneath drifts of white. Snow clung to every tree limb. The sky hung heavy and gray, and the wind screamed through the valley like a wounded animal. Eli and Runa moved fast. Survival demanded it. Eli chopped wood until his arms ached, stacking it high by the hearth. The barn creaked beneath the weight of snow, the cattle restless and hungry. But it was Runa who read the land best. Barefoot, silent as a whisper, she slipped through the pines with uncanny ease. She tracked rabbits beneath the snow, plucked hidden roots from frozen soil, and, with a glance to the clouds, warned Eli of an approaching whiteout hours before the first flake fell. She belonged to the forest in ways Eli never could, but there was something else. Tracks. Wolf tracks circled the cabin. Not just a lone scout, but a pack. Deep prints in the snow. Watching. Waiting. Eli kept the rifle close, his eyes on the treeline. But it wasn't just the wolves. There were boot prints, too. Fresh. Someone else was out there. And they weren't hunting rabbits. The knock came at dusk. Eli opened the door with caution, rifle half raised, but lowered it at the sight. An old man stood there, wrapped in a faded buffalo hide coat. His eyes, dark as storm clouds, studied Eli with quiet, patient knowing. Gray Elk. Eli recognized him from whispers in town. A tracker, a scout. Some said he was half spirit himself. Lived between the old ways and the new. "I heard the howling," Gray Elk said simply, stepping inside without waiting for permission. Runa, crouched by the fire, tensed. Her wild eyes flicked between them, wary. Gray Elk's gaze settled on her. His expression shifted, not fear, not pity, but recognition. "She's not just a stray," Gray Elk muttered. "She's the last shadow of a broken family." Eli frowned. Gray Elk explained. Years ago, during the worst of the settler and Comanche conflicts, a remote family vanished, ambushed, their homestead burned. Only whispers remained. A child carried off, never seen again. "Men are coming," Gray Elk warned. "And they won't care what she is, only what she's worth." In town, the buzz spread like wildfire. Rough men with rougher intentions nursed drinks at the saloon, passing around tales of the wolf girl up at Cartwright's place. They didn't see a lost child. They saw dollar signs, freak shows, traveling exhibits, or ransom demands. The frontier had no shortage of ways to exploit the strange. By the time Eli and Gray Elk spotted the smoke from campfires on the distant ridge, it was clear the hunters were here. The next morning, they found the first message. A wolf carcass, its throat slit, hung from the fence post like a warning. Eli's jaw clenched. Gray Elk said nothing, but his eyes narrowed with quiet fury. They fortified the cabin, barricaded windows, set traps in the snow-drifted woods, loaded rifles. But Runa, she did something else. That night, standing barefoot beneath the stars, she tilted her head back and howled. Low, haunting, otherworldly. From the distant pines, The call was answered. The wolves were not gone, and neither was her past. The first shot cracked the still dawn like splitting wood. Eli jolted awake, hand already on his rifle. Snow drifted from the rafters as boots crunched outside. "They're here," Gray Elk muttered, calm as stone, bow already strung. The bandits came hard, 6 of them, rifles, pistols, knives glinting in the cold blue light. Gunfire shredded the fence. Windows shattered. The barn door splintered. But Eli and Gray Elk were ready. A hidden tripwire snapped. A log trap crushed one man's leg. Another fell to Gray Elk's arrow, silent and precise. Eli's rifle roared, taking a third through the chest. But there were too many, too fast. They forced their way to the porch, blood in their eyes, bullets slamming into the walls. And then the howls, low, fierce, rising from the forest like the voice of the earth itself. The bandits faltered. From the trilene, shapes emerged, gray and white, eyes glowing in the half-light. The wolves. And at their front, Runa, no longer trembling, no longer hiding. She moved like the pack itself, silent, fierce, unstoppable. The wolves lunged. Chaos exploded. Bandits screamed as teeth tore flesh, as claws ripped coats. Guns fired wildly, but they couldn't stop the tide of fur and fury. Runa tackled the last man, snatching his pistol, driving him to the snow. Her wild eyes locked with his, and for a heartbeat, everything stilled. But she did not kill him. She simply rose, and the wolves melted back into the pines. The fight was over. The cabin stood battered, but standing. And Runa, she had chosen to stand with them. The aftermath was quiet. Only the moan of the wind and the distant, fading howls remained. Gray Elk knelt beside the fire, tending a gash on Eli's arm. His eyes drifted to Runa, crouched near the hearth, wolf-like, but human. "She isn't just some lost girl," Gray Elk finally said. "I know the truth now." Eli watched him, silent. Her family, they weren't just settlers. Her father, her mother, they tried to bridge the two worlds. They worked for peace, for land to be shared. But peace has enemies. Gray Elk's jaw tightened. They were slaughtered, her parents killed, the girl left for dead. But the wolves found her, raised her, protected her when no man would. Now, she carried that legacy, the scar of violence, but also the chance to walk both paths. She is not meant to remain wild, Gray Elk finished, voice low. But neither can she deny it. She belongs to both or to neither. A choice would come, and it could not be made for her. The snow melted in time. Spring crept cautiously across the valley. Eli rebuilt what the fight had shattered, fences, walls, trust. But with every sunrise, he saw the same question in Runa's storm-gray eyes. Restlessness, wilderness pulsing in her veins. He didn't fight it. One morning, with Gray Elk waiting by the trail, Eli handed her the old locket, the one they'd found when she collapsed by the barn. Inside, her parents' faded faces smiled faintly through time. "I can give you a roof, Runa," Eli said quietly, "but not what you really need." She understood. Words were few, but her eyes said enough. She pressed a hand to his chest, where the steady ache of grief still lingered. Then, like mist in the dawn, she was gone, riding with Gray Elk toward the distant mountain settlement. One whispered about in towns and firesides, where outcasts, half-breeds, wanderers could find peace. She didn't look back, but Eli stood long after they vanished. Proud, heavy-hearted, but proud. Eli repaired the homestead alone, hammer echoing against the hills. The scars remained, the bullet holes, the bloodstains, but so did the hope. He often thought of her, wild, defiant, beautiful beyond words. She came from the woods, wild as the wind. His voiceover reflects as the camera pans over the valley. but she left with more heart, more courage than most men I've known. Wolves howl faintly beneath the moon, a haunting, familiar song carried on the wind. Eli smiles, faint but true. Some spirits never stay caged. If this story moved you, like, comment, and subscribe. And tell us, what would you have done if the wild knocked at your door?